All right, and here, hold on. Here we go. All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome to the web line. Oh, and hold on, I am not quite as prepared as I thought I was. There we go. All right, let's try that again. Here we go. Hey, everyone, and welcome to the Webline, a podcast about Spider-Man and his amazing world. Here, we discuss all aspects of our favorite web slinger in a fun, informal, but informative forum. I am your humble host, Spidey Librarian, and with me this week, I am again joined by my friend Andrew Zimmerman Jones, and we are going to be discussing a special Spidey Science episode. Andrew, how are things in your world? Oh, Andrew, I'm sorry, we can't hear you. It looks like your mic is still muted.
Everything's going great with me. Looking forward to the conversation,
Yay, me too. Me
especially now
too.
on the mic.
That's all right. We get tech issues all the time doing this sort of thing, so it's all good. Today we'll be covering the question of whether or not it is possible for mere mortals, such as ourselves, to web swing like the wall crawler does, and if not, which obstacles we need to conquer before this bit of science fiction could ever become science fact. We'll talk about the physics involved, a smattering of the physical limits of the human body, as well as the powerful abilities that would need to be possessed by superheroes such as Spider-Man that allow for their wondrous, if fictitious, abilities. Be sure to subscribe to the Webline on your favorite podcast service and leave us a like, review, and follow where appropriate. If you're on a service that doesn't carry the Webline, let me know just by shooting me an email at spideylibrarian@gmail.com, and I'll do what I can to get it pushed out to you. But before we do a daring dive into our timely topic, it's time to dish on the latest spiderific developments with our knockout news segment, the Bugle News Flash. All right, so for our first item, Spider-Man freshman year has gotten a little bit of an update. Most people will recall we first heard about this animated series that was going to be on Disney Plus about 2 years ago. There have been scant developments since. We've gotten some artwork. A few weeks ago, we got a kind of a note from one of the production companies basically saying, hey, yeah, we're working on the logo. It's happening. We're excited to do it. Today, or not today, earlier this week, we got an update from head writer and executive producer Jeff Trammell, and I'm just going to go ahead and quote him here. Nothing that I can share yet, just that I'm eager for everyone to see the show. Our crew worked and is still working hard to make freshman year feel special, fun, and unique, and I'm excited for the world to see it. This is from the direct as well as a couple of other news sources that I checked out. Andrew, are you aware of this show's existence, and are you excited for it?
I am not. So
Oh, oh, can I tell you?
yeah, is it a prequel to the movies, or
It's
that's my guess
actually
from the
it,
name?
it's actually considered to be an MCU property, because it is going to be on Disney Plus, but it apparently is. It feels like it's going to be like a Spider-Man in a different multiverse, because you've got the character setup that looks kind of like Tom Holland's. Kind of the scene where he's like coming in on in Civil War and he meets his aunt and everything, and then boom, there's Tony Stark in his living room. Well, in this animated show, it looks like instead of Tony Stark, it's actually Norman Osborn, and it looks like it's just going to split from there and do a whole bunch of different things. The artwork looks like it comes from like Silver Age comic book styles. It looks like it's going to be really cool, and I've been kind of chomping at the bit to see this show for years now. I'm excited for it, and so I'm glad to hear that it's not among the list of things that Disney Plus has canceled as of yet. They've been making a lot of
Yeah,
cuts lately.
if obviously Spider-Verse is great, but that's Sony. But even their What If series was phenomenal. So like, and they're doing some cool animated stuff with Star Wars. So I think this will be really entertaining.
Oh yeah, no, I think it will be too. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, by the way. The the changes from the movie to the home version continue. For those that are not aware, there have been some kind of minor, subtle changes to the versions of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse that you're seeing kind of on your home screens that are different from the movie. And they're usually small things like kind of graphical flourishes, stuff like that. But in some cases, there have actually been changes, omissions, or additions to dialogue. And right now, the latest, I'm going to call it casualty of that because I'm not sure how I feel about this, is actually the Scarlet Spider, who is played by Andy Samberg. But in the, I guess in the original Spider-Man version, where he has like Miles Morales in a headlock, he has a line that's like, "This is called the sleeper hold, and I'm using my bicep to constrict you." You know, it's a very silly line. And then like they've changed it to where he's saying basically the same thing, but it's a different sentence. "I've got you trapped in my well-defined muscular, so don't even." And you know, I mean, I will, you know, yes, it's a minor change, but if we're going to keep getting a bunch of these minor changes, I feel like we're getting a different product. So I'm just going to say what I said the last time this came up in the Bugle News Flash. Just this, I'm not crazy about this, and I hope that there's like a definitive, this is what came out in the theaters versus here's your home release. And I hope viewers will have access to both of these things because you know, I like my original stuff. Greedo, you know, or no, Han shot first. All right, that's all I have to say. You know, did you know about that, Andrew?
No, I didn't. I haven't seen it on the little screen yet. I only saw it in the theater. Um, it reminds me of when Stranger Things season one, I think when it was put on DVD or maybe even replaying it on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
So season one, have you seen Stranger Things?
Oh yes.
So this in season one, there's it's a fairly significant plot point where Jonathan's like in the woods looking for Will, and he comes upon Steve's house, and he's like gets pictures of Nancy and everything, and so there's a little creepy, like you're not supposed to be doing this, stalker.
Right. Yes.
Not that he's stalking, but like he's being inappropriate, and I guess they like edited that in like later releases so that like he sees them at the pool, but like he's not like taking picture of her through the window and stuff.
Oh.
And that's yeah, and it's like, and I mean I kind of see it like okay, it's he goes on to be like a major protagonist, and so it's like problematic that this is kind of their like one of their first, not even interactions because she doesn't know he's there, but like that this is a stat. I think that may even be in the first episode. And they went back though and changed it. And I think it was on the DVD release, and then someone I saw somewhere that it may even be on the version that's on Netflix now as well. But that's part of the thing with how these are digital and they're so easy to fix that you can really go through and you can have the original version like really sanitized in a way that changes. In that case, kind of a specific kind of emotional moment that you're supposed to, I think, when it was done, feel not entirely comfortable with what's happening. I mean, at least wherever I saw it.
Yeah, no, I feel I see, and I know that they can do this stuff. I don't think that means that they should do this stuff, and it's just kind of like, why? Like if you're gonna put out your show, if you're gonna put out a product one way and then make changes to it later, like. I don't know. I feel like that has to be done contextually, and so I kind of wish that they just wouldn't do that. I'm probably just going to be, shouting this from a mountaintop for the rest of my life, but what can you do? So, all right. Let's see. So Spider-Man No Way Home, we just learned recently that, we all, hopefully, if we've seen it, we remember Tom Holland's like final swing. He's got the new suit on. It looks gorgeous what you can see of it, and it's very clearly inspired by like the other two Spider-Men that he's had his adventure with. And um it turns out that there were at least four other designs that were in consideration for the final suit, and they all look really good. I got this piece of news also from the direct. The key differences really appear to be that there are different spiders on the chest and back. And I mean, some of them look maybe a little bit more like one of them I think looks a little bit more Ditko-esque. Another one just looks kind of jagged and closer to kind of like probably Tobey Maguire's spider than the others. They all look great. I would suggest you go and check them out if you get the chance. But I don't know. I thought that was really cool, and I don't know what do you think of the idea that there could have been like a completely different design from what we saw during those last few seconds of Spider-Man No Way Home, Andrew?
Yeah, you wonder how late these designs are from, because obviously, there would have been a ton of early sketches, before they went with something. But it could also have been the thing they had these designs like made, they were doing tests with him in the suits, so it's just interesting to see how far they would go, how late to try and finalize that. So.
Yeah. No, I think I think it's just nice to see the possibilities that could have been, as opposed to with a lot of like with Across the Spider-Verse and you mentioned Stranger Things now, to the other possibilities that are just simply being shown at the same time, and it's just kind of like, wow, like I don't mind seeing what could have been. I kind of am weird about seeing two multiverses at the same time on a finished product. So it's I don't know. We live in weird times. So let's see. Penultimate news item. Marvel's Spider-Man 2. You guys know this video game that I am really excited for and hoping to play as soon as it launches on October 20th. It looks like it's going to be nearly 100 GB in size. I believe a Twitter post, or wait, no, sorry, this news item comes from Push Square, their website. Basically says that, according to one of their sources, Twitter, the game is going to be, it's coming in at 98 GB. So, I mean, that's 1/10 of a terabyte. That's for to my eyes at least, that's big. It's considerably larger than the previous entries, Spider-Man Miles Morales, and of course Marvel's Spider-Man from 2018. So I'm just hoping that means we got a bigger game with more options and all kinds of stuff. God, I'm looking forward to that. October 20th cannot get here soon enough. And I'm looking forward to just playing between those two characters. You get to switch between Miles Morales and Peter Parker at certain points in the game, Andrew. And I'm so excited because I loved Spider-Man Miles Morales. I actually played it. I finished playing it last night and I got to 100% it. I got all of like the PlayStation trophies and everything. So I I'm really, God, I don't know. Excited is just not the best word for me to use. I'm like jumping off the walls to play this game. So every little news bit I get, I'm really excited about. So um finally, Insomniac, the company that has created the Marvel Spider-Man video games, is celebrating 5 years of Marvel's Spider-Man with a live cast stream, which will be going on September 6th. I believe that's a Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. I got this little news item off of their Twitter/X account. So if you are interested and want to tune in for that, I don't know if I'm going to be able to because I will be working. So hopefully they will archive it so that I can go and watch it. But I'm hoping that they're going to get the cast from the original game and also the current game, because one of those cast members is Tony Todd. Andrew, do you know who Tony Todd is? I suspect that you do. You don't?
Nope.
Go
Not
on.
know who that.
Tony Todd is have you heard of the Candyman franchise, like the horror franchise?
Yeah, I've heard.
He's the Candyman, so it's him. But I also happen to know you've watched enough Star Trek to probably recognize him. He played Worf's brother Kern, and he was also Jake Sisko as an old man in the episode The Visitor from Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, now I know. Now that you've said that, actually, when you say Candyman, I knew who it was. But what I always remember, and I do remember him from both of those. But he also he was one of the Marines in The Rock. I don't know if you ever saw that Nick Cage and
Really?
Sean Connery movie.
No, I didn't. I didn't
Like,
realize that.
not to like spoiler it for anything, but he's basically the bad guy of the show, because the whole premise of that movie is that a bunch of Marines basically like seize Alcatraz, and whenever the commander is like, they called our bluff, and we're gonna try. He's like, no, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna launch missiles on the civilians. So like he's the one who like at the end they have like the climactic battle with.
It has been
And
so
so
long
anyway,
since I've seen The Rock too.
yeah, I feel like I could spoil a 25-30 year old movie at this point.
Yeah, right, exactly. So,
But yeah, he's really good in that. And
yeah, he was
aside,
so.
there's some he doesn't like Elton John, which I think is really the unforgivable sin in that movie. So
That is unfortunate. He's also in The Crow. He's like one of the bad guys' henchmen in The Crow. So, and anyways, Tony Todd is the voice of Venom in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. And so when the first time I heard Venom speak, like chills went up my spine. I'm like, oh, I cannot wait to experience this. So, right now there's a big question of who Venom is going to be in this game, because it's not Eddie Brock. Insomniac has stated that it is not Eddie Brock, and so right now all the all of the suggestions are that it's Harry Osborn instead of Eddie Brock. And I'm of a slightly different opinion. I think it could be Harry, but I think they're holding him up as more of a red herring. And hopefully, I mean, I think it's either going to be Craven the Hunter, who is also in the game, but also you know, I just finished a video that's going to premiere soon that says that there's a lot of good reason that Peter Parker could actually be Venom in the game too, and I'm kind of hoping that's gonna be the case. I'll understand if it's not, but I think that could be a lot of fun. So, all
yeah, I
right.
don't know anything about him, but also in the comics, wasn't Flash merged with Venom for a while?
Yes, he's been Agent Venom. He got the symbiote
Yeah.
for a while. There's been a whole bunch. Matt Gargan was the Venom symbiote for a long time too, during Norman Osborn's like Dark Reign during the comics. And he was an interesting host, but yeah, no, there's all kinds of possibilities. We're not going to know until the game drops, but I'm I'm so ready. All right, and I think that's all of the Spidey news for this week. Now, let's get ready for our feature segment. Spidey Science: Is web swinging possible? All right. Now, I think it's a good idea to start with the obvious. As much as I hate to admit it, Spider-Man isn't real, and his abilities are considered superhuman for good reason. So, scientifically, it's presumably a no-brainer to assume that no, web swinging is not possible for humans, at least not the way that Spidey does it. Andrew, I'm right, right?
I mean, yeah, the way Spidey does it, I think we can definitively say no. Um, the thing I remember, I don't know if you remember when you saw the first Spider-Man movie. Um, the the CGI when he was swinging was actually kind of my least favorite part of that movie,
Oh,
because there
really?
were so many times where he like he would turn, but he hadn't shot the next like the physics of it, of the very first one. I had the same problem with the first Harry Potter when they were on the brooms.
Okay.
Like the turns didn't seem realistic to me.
Were
There
they
were
too
also kind of
sharp
times
or?
where the CGI person was kind of like, I'm like, I think that person would have broken their neck on that maneuver.
Right, right.
Um, but but I felt like that with the first movie. Now, by the second one, I feel like they'd really gotten to like it looked at least very like natural.
Mm-hmm.
But the first one, there were points where it was just like, what's he connecting to right now? He just kind of turned in midair without any other web being shot, and it wasn't clear like how he was turning. And so like for me, that was noticeable.
Yeah, and you said you haven't played the most recent Spider-Man games, but you may find that to be the case there with the web swinging. I mean, I think like in all other ways, like I personally think in all ways, the web swinging is fantastic in both of the current games, and I have no reason to think it'll be any that it won't even be better in the third game. But yeah, like I have found that it's really easy to turn on a dime. Maybe not quite on a dime, but you can change your direction pretty easily in those games, and so it's like I who I'm not the most scientifically minded person in the world, even I've been a little bit like I mean this is cool, but is this really possible? But then I just have so much fun with it that I just don't even really consider it too much. So what would
Yeah.
you what would you say? Because in my brain there are at least three or four very significant sort of scientific barriers, just roadblocks that are, kind of metaphorical walls that you're going to come up against if you're trying to web swing like Spider-Man. I'm curious as to what the most significant one for you is, personally.
Um, Probably for me personally, the most significant one is in the comics how high he gets.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of have this with Batman too. Is like, if he was maybe like a story up, I would buy that there's enough billboards and things for him to grab onto
Right.
and potentially swing. But sometimes in the comic, he's up on top of the building, and and granted he can crawl up there, but like you'll see him swinging, and he's like at the top of the buildings, and I'm like, what's he connected to? Um, there's maybe a crane, or I mean, you can always kind of justify it, but I'd say sometimes like I see that, and that's the thing that I'm kind of, because also the thing with me is he has to be constantly thinking about like, okay, what am I going to do next? Like he can't ever just be like strolling
Right.
when he's swinging. Like he's always got to be mentally, figuring out like where's my next thing, or else he's going.
Think about
I mean, he always has the opportunity to grab onto a wall, but so that's probably like one of the biggest ones is that you just very fast paced. It's like parkour in the air or something.
Right. Exactly. I feel for me, I feel like the most significant barrier is it's sort of like it's sort of like an intersection of where physics meets biology, because like I've seen plenty of YouTube videos of like engineering students and people like making gadgets that allow them to swing like Spider-Man. They're very bulky, and the thing is a lot of them have to go towards not only fueling the web shooter, which I'm putting up in air quotes here for those of you who are listening, but also there's you have to kind of like support the the arms, the shoulders, and so I feel like we cannot accelerate as fast as Spider-Man will, or we will black out. My understanding is that the and again, maybe you can explain this better than I do, but the amount of G-force that comes whenever you're accelerating through a swing and bottoming out is just going to cause like all of the blood in your closed human circulatory system to go from your brain like towards your feet and cause you to have a blackout for one. Does that make any sense what I'm saying here?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've done zip lining, so I'm sure I would black out because I know a few seconds I'm in the air on a zip line is enough stress for me. So like, I'm sure I would not be good at web swinging.
Oh, you've gone zip lining. Oh, I'm jealous. I want to do that at some point. I haven't done it yet, so
it's fun. They and my wife's done bungee jumping. I could never do bungee jumping, and that's probably the best. That's probably the best. I mean, honestly, I hadn't thought about that until just saying it. Like, that's probably the best comparison to what physically you can actually do that's sort of equivalent to what Spider-Man does
Yeah.
is um and except all the care they take to make sure that when you bungee jump you're far above the ground. The problem is, Spider-Man has to do those calculations in their head, and Peter is incredibly smart,
Right.
and at this point has like a very intuitive grasp on it. And some of that may come with like the mutation may give him like some kind of a natural thing as well.
Right. Right. We
With the
could we could
spiders.
narratively explain that away, I guess. But yeah, you're right.
But yeah, in terms of like what, could you survive? I guess kind of I would break it into two. I guess there's kind of two core actions, maybe more, but the one is the swing,
Hmm.
and then the other would be like I guess kind of the spring aspect of the web.
Okay.
Um, so like if you're doing a swing, it's basically if assume no elasticity in the web, and
Okay.
ignoring for now, the stickiness aspect. Like assume it can stick to something
Right.
like super glue, like in a way that's not going to break, and it has the tensile strength and everything.
Hmm.
But if you just swung, then that's just a simple project or not projectile motion, a simple pendulum swing.
Right.
And you would just kind of swing and you'd swing back and everything. And so you can do the math on that, and I haven't done it, but I think you could do that. You probably wouldn't black out from that. Um, and then the question in terms of the material and everything of could you do it is like, so let's say you jumped off a building and you came to kind of the stop because of the web. The bungee cord would be kind of the example
Hmm.
of that, but except it bounces a lot more. So the webbing almost has, and they've never drawn this connection to my knowledge, but it almost has like the properties of vibranium, in the sense that vibranium like is simultaneously like completely immune to waves, but also can like absorb energy from waves, basically kind of depending on plot convenience.
I
And
mean, yeah, it does. Yeah.
and I think the webs are almost the same thing. Like they're as strong as they need to be and as flexible as they need to be at the same time.
Right.
Um, and there's, in terms of could you create that, and they may have explicitly referenced this in the Andrew Garfield movies. There is a material out there called graphene
Okay.
that is a form of carbon. It's kind of a structure of carbon, and they create these things called nanotubes with them, which are incredibly. And I mean, it's literally you can sort of create these by like using a pencil lead. You can actually do like experiments and sort of create these like graphene chains and stuff. But their structure makes them incredibly strong.
Right.
And so like the guys who created these like won the Nobel Prize a few years ago. And I mean, there's literally talk about like this would be the material that if you were to build like a space elevator, you would use this material, and you'd have just like this like cord of this graphene that's like all like bonded together, and it would just be like a rope that goes up to a satellite basically.
Wow.
And then you would like hook the elevator to it, and then it would just like kind of crank up the ropes to the to the satellite and stuff. So in theory, and I mean that's all, they don't have anything like that.
Of course. Of
But
course.
in theory though, this is like incredibly dense. The kind of example is the geodesic domes, the kind of that they
Yes.
used to build like kind of houses out of and stuff.
Yes. Yes.
Buckminster Fuller, Buckyballs was big into that. Um, it sort of uses that sort of structure, so it like reinforces itself, except in like a round like tube that's kind of hexagonal and stuff. So they're like that, the molecular structure is really reinforced. That's kind of a sloppy explanation because it's been a few years since I read on it. But that is probably the material that if you were to try and do something with like a web sling or something, would probably like you'd need something that could kind of be both flexible and strong, and that seems to be kind of the best contender for something like that.
Well, and also, I mean, not only that, but it would also have to dissolve in an hour, right?
Yeah,
You know,
that's the other, yeah, that
yeah,
part I won't get in.
yeah, no, no, no. And again, it's like you said, Spidey's webs is kind of like vibranium. It's whatever the narrative needs at the time. Um, I mean, I know that there have been people that have like, and again, I I watch a lot of YouTube. Some sources are way more credible than others. Some of them are just a kid in their basement doing a thing. But sometimes they come up with some really interesting images. And I saw this one person. He put like two different chemicals into a glass and then used a stick to start pulling them up, and they bonded together really tightly, and it's like it looked like Spider-Man's web. It was basically nylon. But it's just interesting too, because the webbing presents kind of a chemical challenge, like in my opinion one of those barriers. Like it's a chemical barrier where it has to not only be sticky, it also has to be elastic, it has to have amazing tensile strength, and it has to dissolve like in an hour, and that's there are a lot of things that can do like some of those combination of things. I don't think we have anything that can do all of it and fit into like a wrist mounted cartridge on a mechanical web shooter. Like you'd have to compress the hell out of that, and I don't have any idea how you would even begin to do something like that.
Yeah,
So
I did feel like they handled it well in the Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield, like because he orders the now. Grant, I mean, he just like orders stuff from Oscorp, and then but I mean, that's how it was in the comic book. He just like he gets stuff and he just makes it in his room. But like they had kind of like I mean, it was a hand wave like techno babble explanation about like how this particle interacted. But like I was like it was passable enough that I was just like, okay, fine, as opposed to I actually thought it made a lot of sense in the first Spider-Man that they just literally made it part of his mutation so that they didn't have to explain it.
yeah,
In
that
the
is
Tobey
one good.
Maguire, I there were people who were very upset by that. I wasn't, because I was like, I don't need 20 minutes of the movie explaining how he came up with this, because he was bit by a spider. Give him a spider web. It's fine. But I did think they handled it well in the Amazing Spider-Man movies. So
I mean, I'm always going to be team mechanical web shooter, and I know that there are people on the internet who love to take me to task for that. But like I can understand some of the meta reasoning behind why Sam Raimi decided on organic webs, and I'm cool with it. Yeah, bit by a spider, sure, that could be one of your powers. And I mean, there are certain comic book characters, like Silk is one example where she's always had organic webs. I think I'm not sure if Gwen Stacy's Spider Woman. I don't know if she has a web shooter or if she has organic webs. I'm sure that's been answered, and I just don't know it. But what can I say? I'm a bad Spider fan, but but I get it. Of the two, I'm always going to prefer mechanical, because I really like the idea of a kid who stumbles into some powers being smart enough to like supplement them, but also like possibly being guided by some instinct that could have come from his spider bite too in order to make it. That's been raised in the narrative before. But I mean, if that's what you enjoy, hey man, more power to you. I know there's a lot of people that grew up with the Sam Raimi movies. And I get it. I suppose I'm old school in that sense, though. So yeah. I guess in terms of just kind of scientific barriers, let me see. I mentioned the physics and the strain on the human body. So there's physics and biology that's in your way. There's chemistry that's in your way for the web fluid. And then personally, I think there's an engineering barrier too, and I don't know what branch of science that falls under, but applied sciences, I guess. But like, I mean, constructing a wrist-mounted web shooter capable of storing the webbing that you need in the amounts that you would need it is probably a very big significant barrier, because again, I've seen like again engineering or just kind of like makerspace, advanced makerspace people and organizations trying to ask the question or answer the question, hey, how can I be Spider-Man, essentially. And like the answers, at least today, are really bulky, and they're like grappling hooks instead of sticky webs. There's backpacks that have like compressed air on them so that they can do they can shoot from their wrist mounts and everything. And the web swinging from those is just very like basic, like just kind of like swinging on a very low arc. And have you ever done that personally? Like tried to hang from a rope and swing over to something?
Um, I'm sure I have at some point, like a treehouse or something as a kid. I'm sure.
Do you remember how it feels? Because I
Yeah,
haven't.
it doesn't work well. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the
It.
the equal and opposite reaction. There
Hmm.
it will come back on you. 'Cause,
Yeah, and
yeah.
the thing is, like, I haven't done it in years, and I remember that feeling very well because it felt like my arms were gonna just get pulled off of my body, and
Mhm.
and it was a really brief swing. And I mean, I'm not in as good a shape as I was 20 years ago, but like I'm still decently, proportioned, but like that hurt. And like you see
Mhm.
people on trapeze artists and stuff like that, and like these guys are really muscular and they're really well in shape, and that still produces quite a bit of strain on the body. So there are again, like I think I listed four just just by branch of science barriers that kind of explain why we can't do what Spidey does the way he does it. And it's again, sadly it's not real, but I do think that with the limitations on the human body, I feel like we're still a pretty, we tend to innovate. We tend to look for solutions around these things, and I suppose that's where a lot of the YouTube videos that, when I enter in, is web swinging possible, or can you web swing like Spider-Man, um, I found a lot of stuff where just there's a lot of brilliant people getting together and putting their minds to different aspects, the web shooters and the line itself and everything. And so I feel like, I don't know, I feel like we'll probably never get to, no one's ever going to actually be Spider-Man in the sense that we see him on the films. Like
Right.
that's kind of what I feel. But I think that like in 10, 20 years we'll get a little closer. What do you think?
Um, yeah, I mean, kind of the comparison would be we might be able to get maybe a little closer to Batman, where you have,
Yes.
like the grappling gun that has the uh pulley in it, that like yanks you up. I mean, you could probably reach that level of sophistication, but yeah, the Spider-Man just has too much stuff going on. Um, unless yeah, I mean it would require like I said, some sort of real tremendous breakthrough, and then like you said, even then the limitations on the physical body. Which is in general a problem in comic books. The I didn't hear the reference to Spider-Man, although it would apply just as much to him. If someone's falling off a building and like Superman flies by and grabs them, like, moving horizontally, that person has essentially come to an immediate stop, like vertically. And Spider-Man maybe has a little bit better because he does have the web, so like it absorbs presumably some of the impact. Um, but if you come to a stop suddenly, like it doesn't matter to some degree if you come to a stop because you hit the ground or because you hit like a very strong person's arm. If there's nothing to absorb that impact, you're hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Because we'll go back to Newton. Force equals mass times acceleration. So if you accelerated from going very fast to stopping in a very short period of time, there's a lot of force that just exerted itself on different parts of your body. Um, and so yeah, I mean it's always sort of a problem, that the physical aspect of what you see in the comic books. And Spider-Man's strong too. So like again, if he's swinging by and someone's falling and he grabs them, like he can't convert all of that downward momentum entirely into sideways momentum. To
Right.
some degree, part of them just stopped, and they're gonna be hurt and they're gonna be bruised.
Right.
And again, with the swing and the web, you maybe get a little bit more of that than you get with Superman's lead arms, being the thing that stops you. But it's still like those, forgetting even cradling their head, and we won't get into
Oh God.
spinal injuries here. but but even, you know, it is just hard to kind of keep all that into considerations.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's it. I a couple of episodes ago, I did a character spotlight on Gwen Stacy, and my guest Jale Najafali and I we talked about both, like, you know um original kind of iconic love interest Gwen, and we also talked about Spider Gwen, and I mean, like, it's been stated by Stan that the reason Gwen died is because, like, Spidey webbed her, and, like, the impact basically kind of broke her neck, essentially.
Mhm.
And like, it's an understandable, like, reason as to why that would have happened, and why such a character was killed off at the time. Um, but yeah, like, a lot of those scientific rules that can explain things like that, they can kind of go out the door when the narrative demands it, and I understand that. Again, this is all make believe, but as fans, we do try to search for, I suppose, a certain level of verisimilitude in our fiction. We like it to be fairly close, to our reality, or as close as our minds can maybe make it, even if it isn't real. And so, I get why some of those artistic liberties are taken. It's we're artistically innovative as well as intellectually innovative as well, and I think, I don't know, like, I'm thinking of, like, I mentioned Gwen, and I'm just wondering. You mentioned, like, the Superman example with the head cradling and everything, just painted a picture in my head of someone just suddenly being beheaded because Superman rescued them.
Yeah,
You know,
that's literally whenever, like I forget which example did that, but yeah, that was literally like basically what someone was suggesting, is that, like, they would just, which it seems very The Boys, but
yeah, it
rather than
does.
super.
It does. But
Um,
what do you think are some other common injuries? Like, if you just try web swinging, let's say you're able to do it, but, like, I'm thinking of the biological limitations on the human body myself. I mean, let's say you can somehow achieve that velocity. Let's say you manage to tie a rope off to a high end, and you know,
Well, well, like, one is so let's even assume you have all of the powers of Spider-Man. Is I mean, they've definitely given the impression he is going full force into a wall, and then he lands on the wall and sticks to the wall, and it's like, you just slammed into a wall, and if Hulk throws you into that wall, you don't just land and grab it, you bash into it and end up in the next room,
right?
so it doesn't suddenly become easier to land because you were swinging on your web. So, like, how exactly did you slow down there? um so that's probably another one. Like, you'd be banging into walls all the time and everything. um uh the one thing I will say that I think that you see sometimes more so in the movies, in an attempt to make it realistic. I don't. I'm sure it's happened in the comics, but they probably just don't spend as much time thinking about the logistics. They just kind of, have him swinging through the air. Is there are definitely times, and I think all of the movies, where there's some sort of cool, I mean, I guess I'll call it, like, rotational dynamics problem that comes
Mhm.
up, where, like, he's going one way and he very quickly needs to turn around, so he, like, grabs something and just, like, slingshots around,
Right. Yeah.
the flagpole or whatever it is, and that's probably the best, like, science moment of the movie, because it's like, yes, that's exactly what would happen, and then he lets go of his web and he's going the other direction, or something. um and so so that I think tends to, again, when they pay attention to it, then they make that, like, a thing that's specifically part of what he does. Like, I think that's usually handled pretty well. um the other thing that I think they show kind of well, is it also is a thing that, like, is very visually dramatic, so they do it a lot, is when he has to use, like, a lot of webs to, like, build up the tensile strength. So, like,
Hmm.
to stop the train or whatever, because,
Oh
like the
yeah.
webs are, popping, and so he needs to kind of distribute. the pressure or whatever, across like a wide. I think he catches a helicopter in one of the movies or something. Between, I mean, I think
Does
whenever
that
the
in one of
first
the
Spider-Man
games
movie,
too.
yeah, I think the original Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire was coming out right around the time of 9/11, and there actually was a scene where he caught an airplane between the twin towers.
Yes, I
And
think I
then 9/11
remember.
happened,
Yeah.
and they had to delay. And what I'm remembering is it was the first one, but I could go check the dates. They had to
Yes.
delay the movie because they had to take that whole scene out and restructure the movie so it was a different scene,
Yes.
because they felt like they couldn't do that. And I think they also like worked in that whole, or it may have already been there, that scene at the end where people were like, "This is New York, get out of here," sort of thing. Like I think they worked that in as like a kind of post 9/11 New York solidarity moment or something.
I
And
mean, it certainly feels like it was, and yeah, it definitely was the first movie. That was one of the 9/11 moments, and then I feel like they had another one in the second movie where like you mentioned, he stops the subway train with his webs, and is about to fall over, and then the New Yorkers, they grab him and they bring him back into the car. He doesn't have his mask on. They're all very tender with him. I kind of feel like that was kind of like a post 9/11 kind of like working through some trauma kind of moment
yeah,
as well. But it's interesting that you bring up the stopping the train and the stopping like of the ferry from pulling apart and everything with his webs, because um
yeah, that's a good one.
yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. But I did. I mean, I found a couple of examples that said that, given the chemical makeup of spider silk, and how like that's supposed to be like the inspiration for Spider-Man's webbing and everything, that if he's using it the ways that he is, that a lot of the scenarios that he puts it under such immense stress are actually, they're maybe not possible, but they're plausible, I suppose. And I found that fascinating because I'm kind of looking at it, and again, I don't know how strong this stuff is supposed to be. And if you throw a lot of numbers at me, I'm just gonna sit there and grin at you and be like, "Oh, okay, all right, whatever," But like, apparently, this stuff in the right amounts with the right, application could actually stop things like that. And I was like, "Oh, well, that's really cool." Like I just kind of thought that as being just purely fictitious, when apparently it isn't entirely. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head earlier because you said the big engineering problem is all the different properties it has to have. It has to have the stickiness, it has to have the tensile strength,
Yeah.
and the stretchiness, and it has to dissolve in a certain amount of time. And it's like all of those is what you can't do. But could you get something that like has the tensile strength of steel? Yeah. Could you get something that like is incredibly stretchy? Sure. Could you get something that's sticky? Sure. But getting all of those in one material that again you can fit in like a tiny compressor on your wrist, is yeah, that's and used for hours from a tiny compressor on your
Yeah.
wrist.
Yeah.
I mean that's where yeah, it strains credibility that you would ever be able to get all of that together at once.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, again, Spidey's web swinging is, of course, like one of the most, I would say, probably the most iconic thing about him. Like, he can't fly, but he can get around New York no problem. And it's funny too, because you read comics, or you watch a Spider-Man cartoon at a young age, and you're just like, I want to be that, and like the prospect of web swinging sounds really cool, in theory, but then you start looking at just the hard science behind it all, and it's like, wow, like even someone like me, I mean, me, I didn't major in any sciences. Like someone like me is even just kind of looking at it, going, yeah, I mean, I'd love it to be real. I just don't know that it is, and that it ever will be. We've come a long way. I mean, we've if you take Star Trek as an example, I keep bringing up Star Trek on this podcast. So, but I mean, we've got mobile communicators, and other innovations that we saw in the 1960s. We have come a long way. but Spider-Man is pretty it's almost science fantasy in a way. Like, like it's science fiction, but it's like, are we ever going to be able to attain this? I don't know, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. Superpowers, like, I mean, you kind of have to grade it on the curve. Like, compared to other superpowers, it's probably one of the more, that aspect of it is maybe one of the more realistic ones. Because,
Yeah.
like you said, we could kind of replicate this with like 4 different material, as opposed to Captain America's shield. Like it's like what's even going on here, And I mean, yeah, okay, fine, it's vibranium, um, but even and then you get more extreme. You get, can you ever create Iron Man armor and all that sort of stuff. And
Plenty of
so
cosplayers
like,
have
yeah,
tried.
could a person like go around town by swinging from building to building? Like, of all of the like weird superpowers, yeah, that's the one that maybe, like, I would believe that before like full on invisibility or shape shifting or something like that. Like, okay, there will be a web slinger before there's like an invisible man.
Yeah.
I'll go with that. And so
So let me ask you this, because I mean we've talked about all of the science behind various aspects of web swinging. We've talked about human limitations, and I guess now, with it kind of settled that, yeah, we're probably not going to have exactly that, whatever you see in a Spider-Man film or a Spider-Man game. But like, so what are some activities that are kind of like web swinging that we can do? And you mentioned zip lining earlier, and I got a little jealous there, because I've been wanting to do that for a while, and right now I'm in Houston, and 100-degree days are like the norm right now, so I'm not going out in this. But I really do want to go out to some place that's relatively nearby where they have like a zip lining activity, and just try it, since I can actually, and then I can say I've done it. But
so I will say my recommendation on zip lining, because I've done it twice, and one time it was a great experience, the other time it was like nerve-wracking, is go to a place that has like ravines.
Okay.
Because so I'll describe this to you, because you've been in Indiana, so you probably so down around Bloomington, there's a lot of like forests and hilly country and stuff.
Right.
And so that's the first place I did it. And when there's a ravine, what's nice, or a canyon or something, is you're on one side of the ravine, and there's like a platform that's maybe like 5 feet off the ground, and you get up there and you get strapped in and everything. And then you go, and then the ground drops away from underneath you, and you're like over a huge expanse for a few seconds, and then you're back and you're like 5 feet off the ground.
Okay.
Okay. Fine, that's no problem.
Okay.
The other way they do it is when they don't have like that sort of structure, sometimes they will build these giant towers.
Oh
And you'll
yeah.
be on one of these towers, and so you get hooked up, then you stand at the edge of the tower, hundreds of feet above the ground, zip line, you're like way over the whole time. You get, and you're at the next tower,
God.
and then they unhook you. And these towers are like, you feel them swaying from the breeze because you're so high, and then you keep have to go, because they set it up so it's a series of zip lines. So you're just like going from tower to tower, and each one's swaying, and like, you can't get out of this. Like, so
God.
I definitely suggest the ravine situation, because the one with the towers was towers, and then there was a period where you had to go up like a bridge, but the bridge had gaps in it, and it was like a swing bridge. It was horrible for me.
Wow.
It was a very, very troubling experience. But
Oh
the one where
God.
you were just 5 feet above, like that where you were only over the space in between part, I had no problem with whatsoever. Like, because by the time you like had time to process how scary it was, you were at the other side.
Right. Okay.
And and the other one like was just like the whole thing was just, I'm up here the whole time, and like if I slip off this, which I mean, the towers were big enough, they had railing, like you weren't gonna slip off the tower, but like you're just on there, it's swaying, like this thing could snap under you. Yeah, I mean, it was a weird paranoid thing. But so I definitely recommend like find a place with ravines. So.
I mean, as you were describing all that to me, like I feel like it, as I've gotten older, my body, like I don't feel like I have any control over this. Maybe this is neurological or something, but like I used to not mind working in high places or anything like that. Like I basically had kind of this instinctive trust that everything was built to support me and that, I could function with it and everything, and I would trust the people that I was with and everything. As you were describing this to me, like I was fighting the body's urge to kind of like seize up or flail just because like just because of what you were describing, like, oh my god, I don't know what I would do in that situation.
Oh,
It's
I can make it even worse.
oh god.
So on the
Okay.
very first tower, they're like, you have a harness on, and they like hook you into the little like cable thing. And as the person's doing it, they got their gloves stuck in the little like wheels.
Oh
And so
god.
they're like, it's like, what the
Oh
hell
god.
is happening here? Like it was horrible.
Yeah.
Um, so
Oh my god. Well, okay. Well, I still intend to do
not
it at
great
some point.
for
I
now.
just don't know when. Um, I mean, there are some. I suppose there are other activities than ziplining that are kind of sort of like web swinging.
Trapeze, trapeze,
Trapeze, yeah.
gymnastics, would definitely have some overlap.
Parkour, I
Also, even some
suppose.
things, huh?
Parkour, I suppose.
Parkour, pole vaulting,
Yeah.
sort of. Um, so I mean, yeah, there's definitely things people do. Um, Repelling, I guess. I've done
Oh
repelling too.
yeah.
That
I hadn't even thought about
um,
that.
yeah, I mean that's interesting because repelling it's interesting how much control you feel like you have when it is literally a controlled fall. But like when I've done it, like I actually felt like I had a great deal of control over my descent.
Well, that's cool.
Um uh so um
There's
so
a
that's interesting.
there's a gentleman. I think his name is Robert Alain. He's I think they've called him the French Spider-Man. I guess he's from France. Uh,
I've heard of this guy. I don't know the details, but yeah.
he goes to he goes to really tall like landmark buildings and frickin' climbs them like without any equipment, without any line, and has done it. Like has actually scaled a lot of these places. I can't remember the names of them or anything. But you could probably look him up on YouTube.
Mhm.
But he's apparently been arrested like hundreds of times for trespassing because technically there's no
Yeah.
law against wall crawling apparently.
Yeah.
But I know it's not web swinging. It's, if we ever cover wall crawling, we'll probably go into him detail on him a little bit more. But I found it fascinating because like there's someone out there who has the title of he has a title of Spider-Man. And he's like I was watching some of the videos and I'm just like I have to look away after a few seconds. I'm like I couldn't do this. And it's like my body feels what it would be like to be in that situation and it does not like it. But yeah, like there are I guess a number of activities that even if you're never going to web swing, you can get kind of like a I don't want to say a similar thrill, but it's probably going to be something like what you might experience if you're,
What's the
go ahead.
was gonna say there's that skydiving in the suits where it's almost like gliding. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like jump off a cliff
Oh,
with like you look like a flying squirrel. Like your suit has like wings on it.
yes, I know what you're
Um,
talking about. And
I don't know what the name for that is, but
well, I'm,
it might just
I mean, it's a thing that you could do. I don't know what it's called either. And if someone knows, please feel free to tell us. However, I can tell you this much. I can tell you this much. That is actually going to be a feature in the next Spider-Man game. In addition to the
uh,
web swinging, you'll have the ability to like basically slingshot yourself on a web, and then Miles and Spider-Man, it looks like both they have like the web underarm things on their
mhm.
suits, and they can extend them out and glide now. So it looks like there will be a gliding mechanic in the game, which again, I'm so goddamn excited to play this game. Like I'm
Yeah.
just climbing the walls for it, literally and figuratively. So, but yeah, that's I don't know what it's called. I've seen it, but I couldn't tell
Mhm.
you what it is. So, but but yeah, there's a lot that you could do, and you know, at least come close enough to that feeling of being having your Spider-Man moment, kind of in real life. I
You,
feel
so here's the business opportunity in this
okay.
is you have like they have like trampoline places and stuff. Um, so you have one that has like rock climbing walls
Uh
all
huh.
around it and trampolines, and you're hooked up to like a cable, and so you can be like rock climbing and then like jump and swing across the room like on a track to like the other wall and grab the other wall
Oh
or
wow.
something. And a lot of waivers are involved,
Oh, I'll
but yeah,
bet. Yeah.
that's how you can kind of simulate the experience.
No, oh God. I mean, that would be a lot of fun. I could see someone trying to do that actually. I would imagine you would have to limit it to like one person at a time in that particular
Yeah, you'd
setup
have to.
though. If you got like a
You
bunch of different people and a bunch of different tracks, they're gonna get like probably tangled or
yeah, that would be.
something. So, but no, I think that could be,
You
yeah,
could have
that could be.
multiple. You could have multiple tracks, and you're always going from this wall to that wall. So like you could have people like next to each other over here going this way or going this way, but it's But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's some way you could rig it up.
Yeah, no, I'm sure, but no,
This is
that
how
actually
Elon Musk should be spending his time. This is what we need
yes.
him working.
Yes, no,
Um,
forget Twitter X, Elon. Do something like this, you know? So, oh my goodness, that's I didn't even think about that. So, hold on just a second here. Okay. There we are. So, but I mean, I think this has been a pretty good discussion about web swinging in general, Spidey science in general, and I guess web swinging in particular. And I feel like, you know, I mean, again, you know, I know this stuff isn't real. We all know this stuff is not real, hopefully. And so, but I think it's interesting to take a look at the actual kind of scientific limitations on this aspect of what makes Spider-Man so so famous. And while I think that you know while we're never gonna, I feel, 100% nail it, I feel like there are plenty of activities that we can do in the meantime that I think will kind of give us a little bit of that high that we imagine Peter Parker must feel when he's just web zipping and swinging and point launching off all of New York City. I mean, maybe just a tiny little bit, but it's something, and that's, by definition, not nothing. So, all right. I mean, this has definitely been an eye-opening discussion. While I think there's plenty of reason to doubt that humans will ever web swing exactly the way that Spider-Man does, I also know that we are an innovative lot, and you can never quite take anything completely off the table. There was, at one point a time, when I just lived in acceptance of the fact that we were never going to see Spider Man in a Marvel Cinematic Universe film. And of course, that has changed, and eventually we got No Way Home, which I never in a million years would have predicted 10 years ago, you know? So, and I know that's just film, but again, we can't take anything off the table completely. Some of those innovations have led to equipment and activities that have put us closer, and I think that's pretty noteworthy. I want to thank Andrew for coming in today and talking some Spidey science with me. Andrew, do you have any parting thoughts on this topic?
Not exactly. I will say if you were interested in any of this, I know there are books on out there on the science of superheroes and things
Yes.
like that. That I'm sure I own some of them. They're just boxed up right now, so I didn't get to them. But I'm sure they go into more detail on some of the specifics with Spider-Man and things like that, as well as other superheroes. So I would say if you were curious by this, by all means, check those out. And like you said, I'm sure there's all sorts of YouTube videos of people who have are either discussing the science or trying to actually invent things, which would be a really interesting follow-up for anyone who found this intriguing. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Do you have any projects that you'd like to plug or want to tell people where you can be found online?
yeah. So I can be found online at probably the best place is either Facebook AZJ Author or Twitter AZJ Author. I can be found at both places. My current project is I am working, actually, a deadline for part of it is due tomorrow on the third edition of Quantum Physics for Dummies. And so I am interestingly doing some things on harmonic motion and harmonic oscillators, which tie into like pendulums and stuff like that at the quantum level for that book. So that's what I was thinking about, harmonic motion and strings and springs and stuff like that earlier today. So it was like a good thing to migrate over to the tensile strength of the web and everything. And yeah, by all means, reach out and follow me. I actually am going through some transitions, so probably will be generating a bit more content moving forward. So follow me on those locations if you want to find out more.
Okay, and if you want to send me a link to any of those things, I'll be sure to put them in the show notes
Yeah, great.
and things like that, so that way people can have the opportunity to reach out from you just from listening to this podcast. So, all right, well, thank you, and with that, we've reached the end of the segment, and I believe the end of the show. If you enjoyed this episode of The Webline, please be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on my YouTube channel, simply named Spidey Librarian. The Webline is also available on audio services, so when you see us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or any other such service, please leave a review and rating and a follow if you can. You can find me on my socials under the name Spidey Librarian on Threads, Twitter/X, Instagram, WordPress, and Twitch. And finally, if you'd like to shoot me an email, you can contact me at spideylibrarian@gmail.com, where I'll be happy to hear your thoughts, rants, and ideas. You never know, your email might be featured in an upcoming episode. Be sure to join us next week on the Webline, where I'll be flying solo for the first Spidey Games installment. I'll be doing a retro game review of the side-scrolling adventure game Spider-Man vs. the Kingpin for the Sega Genesis. It'll be a nostalgic trip down memory lane as I talk about one of the first games that made me feel like I was Spider-Man. Thank you for listening, and until the next episode, I'll be wishing you a good day. Bye.